how engaged Black men are in their children's lives. But I think it's easy to try to point out the negative, and it's easy to believe, again, that we aren't doing what we should because that's what society has consistently told us. And it's hard for us to psychologically believe the best of ourselves because, again, that's not what society has told us about ourselves. These systems have been in place to systematically take us out of the house through over-criminalization, through the overuse of substance abuse, through not allowing individuals to be able to have access to capital and or work resources. We have to deprogram all of this in this battle in which we're fighting and combating, but we'll get there. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we have traumas initially. We have to be able to acknowledge and understand what has transpired to us, but then also understand the many stories of how our ancestors and those who've come before us have overcome those traumas. If they had the ability to be able to do so, then so can we. But before you can address and attack anything, you have to acknowledge it.
How do you know Jesus is Black?
I mean, I just left from from Africa, and I've been to the region in which the Bible says that Jesus lived, and the people there have very brown skin. And I would imagine they would kind of look the same way now that they did then. So that's how.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Young and Dumb Show. We are back again. I am your host, Aaliyah Duah, and we are here talking to my former advisor, political science chair of the poli sci department at Virginia State University.
You got
and
it.
then we just had President Abdullah on here, so you already know that's going viral. So we gotta talk about some stuff.
I don't know if I can live up to T'Challa.
No, you can. And also former vice mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia. And just the gem dropper himself, right? I watch a lot of your social media page where you're sharing a lot of information to our people that's helpful. So we about to drop some gems here today. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, we try to do what we can, and I'm honored to be on the show.
Thank you.
You're a phenomenal student when you're here at VSU, and I'm looking forward to all the great work and what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's get started, right? So you're here with your daughter Stokely. And you know, I want to talk about the importance of fatherhood, specifically in the Black community, right? And having more strong Black fathers, mentors. You talk a lot about mentorships, like mentoring men and things like that. And there were a lot of systems that were put in place to make sure that like Black fathers can be taken out the household. Right. Why are Black fathers targeted, and why are they so important?
Well, I think Black men have been targeted literally ever since the time in which we've been bought over on the boat. I mean, the transatlantic slave trade was very intentional in terms of trying to bring over quote unquote Black helpers, while Black women were being used in many regards as breeders. Black men were being seen also as breeders, but also as individuals who were simply here to do work, and or the value in which we bring to our families was not seen as something that was necessary by through the eyes and the lens of white supremacy. So I think, again, in that sense specifically, we understand how there's been a systematic approach to take out Black men within their families. But I think that we've been able to, in many regards, reverse those trends. I think a lot of people often point to the data point that may say that 70% of Black children or Black families don't have a dad. I've seen this, or Black kids are raised without a father or in a single parent household or something like that. And that stat is just unequivocally false, because, you know, a person or a kid being born to a single mom or a quote unquote unmarried mom doesn't mean that the father isn't active.
Yes. So I want to speak to that. I want to speak to that real quick.
Like the data is being read incorrectly.
I oftentimes see, I have this question. Maybe you can tell me if like your point of view. If the father is in the kid's life, but like the parents are separated, does that make the mother a single mother? If the mom, if the dad is equally like contributing to like taking care of the kid, spending time with the kid, paying for stuff, like being a present parent, does that make the mom a single mom?
What do you think?
I don't know.
So if a person is active They're engaged. They're involved.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think we're just saying single as in like not in a relationship with the parent. But that I don't think that makes it single mom.
So I think to that point, we have to be very careful with how language is used. And oftentimes how, just to be quite frank, in my personal estimation, white supremacy has brainwashed and or utilizes language and words as really dog whistles to make us believe the worst about ourselves, to feed into this belief in which we're inferior. And that's how, again, white supremacy and or superiority is maintained, by using whatever kind of caveat that an individual can think of to be able to show instances and or glimpse of why we are not what we should be, when in all actuality, the data is very clear that the CDC has provided studies in which it showed that Black fathers are the most active fathers of all ethnicities. Literally right now, we can show that nearly 51.3% of all Black women around the age of 35 get married to Black men. There are also data points that shows, there's a tons of different data points that show how engaged Black men are in their children's lives. But I think it's easy to try to point out the negative, and it's easy to believe, again, that we aren't doing what we should, because that's what society has consistently told us. And it's hard for us to psychologically believe the best of ourselves, because, again, that's not what society has told us about ourselves. And Dr. Joyce DeGruy talks a great deal about post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yes.
And it's very easy, again, for us to believe negativity, but I challenge us to do the opposite.
Yes. So I guess, okay, I agree with everything that you said. And I also agree that white supremacy does do a good job to control our narrative, and we run with the narrative, right?
Some of us, because we don't speak in generalizations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of us run with the narrative and it spreads, right?
Right.
However, I do see, though, like when I look at my friend group, right? Or like, the average people that I hang out with, or not even hang out with, that I know, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of them, like, is not many that have active dads. Okay. Right? So I guess the question is, like, where does that stop? Where does that... Because to some point, some of the statistics are true. So how do we stop the... What do I want to call it? Like, the lack of fatherhood? Or let's say maybe you have a father who maybe just sent you money, but in a way that doesn't make you feel valued.
Speaking of active fatherhood.
Yes, this is active fatherhood. This is my daughter, right, Stokely. But this is important though, right? Because now you have your daughter seeing you put in work, right? And you're fostering a relationship here with her, and while working and doing what you need to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right? But I think it's important for us to also keep in mind that our experiences are not the totality of the African American experience within the diaspora or within the country as a whole. As I encourage my daughter to not eat paper. Sweetie pie, can you let daddy finish? Thank you, my love. I love you. So again, it's important for us to keep in mind that our experience does not represent the entire experience of all of us. And as easily as you may say, and within my social circle, I see a lot of us who may not have active fathers. I think we also have to keep in mind, again, that while that may be your norm, the environments in which I may spend time in my social circles, because I'm a little older and most of my friends are dads, all of them are active. So if I were to say, well, I don't know how that could be, because like all of my friends grew up with their dads and they were active, or the people who I follow on social media, my algorithm may show X, Y, and Z. That also doesn't mean that my experience is the totality of our experience as a whole, as a people. So when you ask the question or pose the question, where does it stop, and or how do we change these things? I think it's a consistent evolution of people as a whole, and then also the encouragement of Black men to remain diligent and steadfast in terms of engagement with their children. It also is important for us to continue to heal ourselves and or go to therapy. And for many of us, again, not all, but for many of us, or some of us, we did grow up without fathers or active fathers, and there's a great deal of us who are looking to reverse those trends. So that's kind of how I view it, and we just have to continue to do the work. And then last but not least, man, is deprogramming. Like these systems have been in place to systematically take us out of the house through over-criminalization, through the overuse of substance abuse, through not allowing individuals to be able to have access to capital and or work resources. So we have to deprogram all of this in this battle in which we're fighting and combating, but we'll get there.
Yes. Now that leads me to a point where I saw a post that you reposted of Dr. Umar where he was basically like how as men get mad at women when women say like, I don't need a man, or like they're overly independent, or they say like, I got it, right? When that was the environment that men kind of created for women, right? So how some men, some men created for women. So as a man, right, because we're also speaking to young men, right, and also young women as well, what are some things do you think that like every young man should kind of values that they should get to establish so that they could become a man, right, and foster that relationship with a woman, create a household and things like that? Because I think there aren't a lot of role models, right? So I'm like actively in school. Not everybody.
I'm just listening to you.
It's not everybody. Cause I see your brain. This is not in every community, whatever. But I specifically work in schools, right, where I have my financial literacy program, and I target schools in low income communities, right. And a lot of times, you know the story, right? Those are a lot of young men who are growing up, and women that's growing up without dads, right? These are people who don't have role models, right? They're like, one of my students, he has 3 brothers, and one of his brothers died, and the other 2 are in jail, and one is coming home soon. Like, that's like him and his friends' stories, right? So it's just like, where are the role models? How can these young men become the person or the change that they didn't see?
Yeah, so you asked a couple of questions. One, how do we develop young men into being upstanding community members? I think is kind of the totality of the first question. I would say initially there has to be a commitment of older men to spend time with younger men, intentional time in which we display and or model behaviors that we want them to be able to follow. And in that regard, there's going to require a sacrifice of older men. And as much as we like to play 2K and or Madden, or, just like to do things for our own sanity, there has to be a sacrifice for us to be able to help develop the next generation. So that's often my challenge to my brothers. We have to be able to engage and sacrifice in that regard. When you ask the question or pose the question, what are good qualities and or traits? I think patience with self, because understanding that your frontal lobes don't even fully develop until you're around 33 years old. Your frontal lobes being your reasoning, your logic and so forth. So a lot of guys are trying to figure it out. That's not an excuse for accountability, but it's an understanding of yourself, which I think we all need. Secondly, I would encourage brothers to operate with a level of integrity and honesty while being able to do hard things. And for some brothers, because these traits and or qualities weren't modeled, you have to be able to seek wise counsel, which means that you can't just listen to Future all day. And, no disrespect, but you can't just kind of consume and or take in things that are talking about qualities and or behaviors that you wouldn't want to, or that aren't going to necessarily allow you to be able to grow into the man in which you want to be.
I agree. Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then how do we combat, or how do we get brothers more engaged and or involved? I think, again, there are a lot of brothers who are, but the harvest is plenty and the workers are few. And oftentimes these systems have created such deplorable conditions that it requires an effort of Hercules, quote unquote, for us to be able to reverse some of the trends. But that doesn't mean that we can't do it. And it doesn't mean that we aren't doing it in totality. It also means that we have more work to do because we haven't done it everywhere. So when we see groups like the 100 Black Men of America, or our fraternities, or our Masonic lodges, or just brothers who, say, hey, in our neighborhoods, we want to get engaged. We have to be, again, more intentional with operating with integrity and giving our time to our young folk.
Yes, I agree. Now that we mentioned fraternities, right? This is a high idea that I had, and I recently posted this on my Instagram story the other day, and I received a lot of different points of views off of this. I feel like I can only speak. I pledged here at Virginia State, so I can only speak for like what I see here and like what I see at other local chapters or whatever, and what I've just seen in my experience being in Greek life. But my thoughts is that I feel like the foundation and the principles of a lot of these Greek life, the Divine Nine organizations, is essentially to really bring change to our communities, right, and for our people. And I feel like a part of the process of being online, right, that we should be learning Black history, but like African history, Black history, where people are learning like value of self, right? Where people are seeing like causes that, like, I feel like every initiate or person who's trying to become a member should receive a cause that they're fighting, coming out, like where it's not like all right, you pledge and then now you're just a part of a chapter and then you're doing like garbage cleanups and stuff like that, right? Like there should be like more intentionality there, because we have access to all these young people who have the energy, have the strength, have the mindset and the willpower to actually create this change, right? And when we look at people like Fred Hampton, who was like 21 years old, who was creating change, like I feel like sometimes like we take what we have for granted, but it's because the material is not there sometimes. Right? Who
would teach them that?
I think that it should be a part of like the curriculum of when like you join, right? You know how when you're joining, you get like your, I don't know how like other orgs do it, but you get like, you know, your study guide or whatever, and you're learning like, learning information about the org, but like you should be at a probate spitting like Black history facts. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, because at the end of the day, like we're the foundation of all our ancestors who came before us, right?
But what if the persons who are leading the chapters also don't know said Black history?
But that's when the generational thing comes in, right? Because if, let's say my line was to start that, right? And that was what we did. And then it becomes a cycle every time. Right. You know what I'm saying? Same thing, like same way everything else changes, it becomes a cycle. Right. But I think that it would definitely have to be like something that is instilled like nationally, right? Where they say like this is a part of like same way we got to take a test to join, like this is on the test.
And I think I agree with you 125% wholeheartedly, where I think I hear some individuals, like as you say, that I could hear other people saying, well, we are teaching Black history because we're teaching the history and the essentials of our founders who were Black, and that is a part of Black history, so we can't negate that, which I wholeheartedly agree with and I also understand. So it goes also to show that two things can be true. By a person learning the history of the organization, these are Black Greek organizations, so you're learning about the trials and tribulations of your founders and the things in which they had to go through. There also can be an emphasis on an educational aspect of our people and what collectively we've had to go through and or where we're going. But I think just now taking a step back, it's important for us to have grace with each other. Because like I try to live by this quote, be patient with people, but impatient with progress. Because we have to be patient with people because people are going to come along when they come along. But we have to be impatient with progress because we got to keep going, like no matter what. So it's not for everyone to be able to digest that kind of information in the immediate, because not everybody can handle it.
Very true.
And then also there's still a lot of patience that we need with some of the elders because they too don't know certain things.
Very true.
The progress is something that we have to consistently push for, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible in that regard.
No, I agree. What's good, y'all? Are y'all having a hard time starting conversations in large rooms? Do you need to find more effective ways to draw attention to yourself without wearing a fancy outfit? I figured out a hack. You need some Financial Revolution merch. Everything is a staple piece that represents Black wealth. You are what you wear, so make sure you join the rest of the billionaires and get some FR merch. We have hoodies, sweatsuits, t-shirts, and much more. Make sure you visit www.financialrevolutionn.com and use code podcast for a special 10% off. Again, go to www.financialrevolutionn.com and use code podcast for a special 10% off. Let's get it, y'all. I do hear you and I do truly agree with you, but I also think like, well, let me ask you this. Do you feel like we should put a timeline though on, because part of your quote was be impatient with progress. Should we put a timeline on Black liberation?
No, like, because we're consistently evolving. Yeah.
We had this debate on the phone the other day.
Yeah.
Where Yanaya feels like some Black people, right now everyone, Black people always constantly blaming the government and saying, I don't have this, I don't have that, blah, blah, blah. And we have to wake up and start holding ourselves accountable. Yeah, right? That's one true. That's one part. I agree with that. But what I was also trying to explain to Yanaya is that, like, sometimes it is hard how can you be held accountable for something you don't know? That's also true. Right? And she feels like we should put a timeline on our liberation, because, like, she's basically saying that, let's say in we're in 2024. She's like, in 2050, should we still be blaming the government? Should we still, be having the same issues that we have here now in 2024? Yeah. These issues are just going to evolve because the systems are going to figure out different ways to operate just as they are now. But that means that we also have to be even smarter and create new solutions, which we will do. So, I mean, we have to take into account, you don't have 400 years of oppression, systematic oppression at that, and then you just rid yourself of it in 2 to 3 decades. That's not how it works. But we can make change, and that change doesn't have to be incremental. But to pretend as if we're going to dissolve public housing in 20 years and everyone will be getting paid a living wage, or Social Security and or TANF won't be necessary in 20 years. Those things just aren't true. And furthermore, we also have to keep in mind that these are not solely Black issues. Like, it is classism. Yeah, classism is real. Yeah. And if we're being quite frank and candid, there are instrumentally more white people taking advantage of welfare, TANF, public housing assistance, and things of that nature than Black people. Part of that is because they're larger in number, but these systems as a whole have created a race of people, a class of people who are just seen as less than, don't have access to capital, don't have access to resources, don't have several health inequities, several educational inequities. So while, yes, there can be more that is done, we can't take into account, or we can't discount the effects of the psychological impact of some of the traumas that we have had to live through, and then how those traumas manifest in a wide variety of different ways. And that's where the grace and patience with each other has to come into play. And then that means we have to do that much more. I just personally think that sometimes like being in the schools with the kids really just helped me change my mindset in so many ways. On the ground. Yes, on the ground, literally, because, like, I see how, like, they have no idea, no idea about a lot of different things. So it's just like. But did you at their age? To a certain extent, I had a certain level of knowledge, right? Because and you think there's none of the kids in your school who know any things you do? No, yes. So some do. Some do, and some got it, and some don't, right? But I also think that there's a lot of differences between I would say. Well, we all in the same generation, but I would just say, like, my class versus, like, a lot of these young people, like, you can just see, like, their heart and, like, it's not there. Like, it's like they all just seem really depressed, like, all just really down. Like even to the comments that they'll make. Like, yesterday I was in the school, I'm talking to the kid, I'm like, what's one thing in your life you really want to change? And this is an 8th grader. He's like, depression, poverty, right? And these are, like, real things that they're saying. And you have some kids who are just saying it just to be funny, right? Because they think, like, that's what makes them cool, right? So it's like when you're seeing that and you're hearing that, and some of these kids who are actually genuinely depressed and lost, right? It's like, how do we go about helping them? Like, how do you go about bringing life into someone who's, like, at the age of 14, they feel like everything has been taken away from them? Yeah, consistency. Us being consistent with implementing strategies to help them understand their value and getting them to where they need to be. But then there's also a role of patience, because we have to keep in mind that these individuals are 13, 14, 15 years old. They have access to a wide variety of different things that others didn't, i.e. social media. So they're having access to
to terminology that prior generations didn't. They have access to seeing and being exposed to things that prior generations may not have been exposed to so rapidly. And because of that, we have to develop new strategies to assist in their development, while also maintaining and understanding the fact that that's not a 100% absolute for all children.
Yeah, very true.
And because it's not a 100% absolute for all young people who may be living in poverty or who may be living way above the socioeconomic line, or their parents may make a ton of money, there's still a need for growth and development within every child, as there is a need for growth and development within every person. So being gracious with them as we're gracious with ourselves, and consistently imparting knowledge to the best of our ability, in my personal opinion, is how we get to where we need to go. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
It's a fact. Nipsey Hussle.
Facts.
Yeah. All right. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit and talk about the Freeman Bank story.
Okay.
Right. So my whole thing is like financial literacy, right? I love talking about money, and really just bringing financial freedom, right, to our people, right? Because I think a lot of these issues stem from not having the money or having great financial skills that can get us out of certain positions and things like that, right? So a lot of times I try to tell people, like, challenge everything. Like everything, good or bad, right? Challenge things, right? Because when you ask questions, when you challenge things, you learn, right? And a lot of times we just some people accept things for what it is, right? So like the term shoebox money or putting money under the mattress, right? I try to tell my students that, like, some of the mindsets that have been passed down generationally is caused from an experience that has happened to people. Right. So I want to talk about the Freeman's Bank story and how that has messed up the mindset of how some Black people choose to save or invest their money.
I don't even know if I would say messed up. I think that has allowed for some of us to develop defense mechanisms to be able to strategically navigate through these systems in a way in which we can survive. So it's a defense mechanism and a survival tactic. And for those who aren't aware, what Ms. Duah is alluding to, the Freedman's Bank story, the Freedman's Bank was an institution that was developed by the government post-Civil War, which essentially was a bank that was initially created, and then there were several branches that were developed, and it was supposed to be a secured way for Black folk, or a place for Black folk to put in their money, the money in which some of those would be working as sharecroppers, business persons, a wide variety of different people who had access to capital and or were earning capital.
What's capital? Remember you're talking to kids.
Well, you tell me, what's capital?
Capital is money, y'all. Capital is money, right? Capital is how people like to talk about money. And
Or one way, you have social capital.
Social capital as well, right?
Relationship capital, like, your name. You want to keep your name good because people can vouch for you. Emotional capital, being able to understand different situations. But in this particular situation, we're talking about financial capital, so money.
So form of currency, like something.
So people would put their money, Black folk were putting their money, and this is post-Civil War. So if I'm not mistaken, I think the first Freeman's Bank was opened in 1867. See, 1867, 1871. You could fact check me there. I don't have the year right off the top of my head. But in any event, persons put their money in the bank. People were, putting their life savings in this bank, consistently putting their money in the bank. And the Freedman's Bank was owned by a group of white men. There were no Black people on the board. And the white men misappropriated the funds. The CEO was stealing some of the money. He had a gambling debt, or had a gambling problem. We used some of the money for his gambling debt. The Freedman's Bank board as a whole bet on, or excuse me, these individuals who were on the board, some of them were also CEOs and or leaders of other banking institutions. So they would take the Freedman's Money's bank and put it into their bank to go and make faulty loans. They would go and use it for horrible investments, whether that be like in the real estate market, whether that be in the transit market, like the railroad systems that was developing and whatnot. And long story short, they lost the money. And Black people's entire life savings were lost.
It was like trillions. It would have been like today's trillions.
The equivalent of nearly $1 trillion. And essentially, during the end, they tried to bring in a famous black person. And I'll let you all do the research to find out who that was.
Frederick Douglass.
I'll let you all do the research to find out who that was. This person who white people just thought, well, if there's anybody who could fix it, this person could. And when he got in and saw the books, he essentially said that this was a train that already had left the train tracks. And he was so saddened because he said that the loss of resources in this bank was the equivalent of black people having to serve another 10 years in slavery.
Wow.
And when you now hear, or, if you hear your grandparents or your great grandparents, or even just some people being very non-trusting of banks or financial institutions, won't put their money in the bank, put their money in a mattress or in a shoebox, as Aaliyah alluded to. A lot of that goes back to the mistrust that a lot of us had to have because they lost their money. Their generations or future generations who maybe could have used that money to do a wide variety of different things, they lost their life savings on a promise from the U.S. government.
That's crazy. That's a crazy story, and I'm glad that you shared that, right? Because a lot of people don't know that story at all, and like I said, like some people just take things for what it is, and we just adopt these mindsets that have been passed down onto us without knowing the history of where that mindset came. Right. And now if we learn how, like, okay, there's a whole board now, there's a whole government agency called the FDIC, right? Where now our money's insured, right? And things like that. Now we can kind of operate a little differently because times are different, right? So I want to ask you, based off of that story, right, how can we, as people, not allow past traumas to, one, like, stop projecting it onto other people, right? But also, like, just not make it a generational thing, because I see how, like, that has not helped us. So in some ways it has, right? It has, in some ways it has, because, like, some defense mechanisms are good because it teaches us, like, all right, next time I'm in war, let me not do that. However, in some ways it holds us back because now we're scared to do something.
Well, I think it's important to understand that there still are a whole lot of black folk who are more than willing and capable of taking risk, building black businesses. We have more black millionaires than we've ever had before, more black-owned business owners than we've ever had before. Black women specifically are the leading class and most educated group of people in the United States of America. So there's still a lot of us who are understanding the financial landscape and doing very, very well. To your question specifically, how do we not allow for past traumas to prevent us from moving forward? I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we have traumas initially. So we have to be able to acknowledge and understand what has transpired to us, but then also understand the many stories of how our ancestors and those who've come before us have overcome those traumas. And if they had the ability to be able to do so, then so can we. But before you can address and attack anything, you have to acknowledge it, in my personal opinion. And then once we acknowledge it, we can devise plans and strategies to be able to overcome. And that's why, I love, folks like Earn Your Leisure. And
shout out Earn Your Leisure. Shout out EYL.
I may not agree with everything in which they say, which is okay. But I think they are a resource for a lot of us. I love this platform in which you're developing.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
And teaching our people about different ways, and young folks specifically about different ways to utilize their resources. So, having the access to the information and then executing on said access when you get it is something that's very important, and we just have to continue to do so.
That's a fact. Now, I definitely agree. I also want to ask you the viral question that is going viral right now on social media. You are the political science chair here at Virginia State University, right? Being what school did you graduate from?
Undergrad, South Carolina State, and I got my master's and doctorate here at Virginia State.
Okay, so HBCU, all through, right?
All three.
Yes. Do you believe that college is worth it?
Yeah. Right.
And I'm actually the same exact question I asked President Abdullah, how I asked him, right? Yeah. Essentially, if I take out a $90,000 loan, or I pay $90,000 for education.
Right.
Do I get a return of investment that is $90,000 worth?
Undoubtedly, in my personal estimation, on relationships alone. You can't put a price and or a value on the people in which you're going to meet while you're here at school. You also can't put a price and or value on if you're doing this right. The lessons in which you're going to learn in terms of tenacity, in terms of intellectual fortitude, in terms of being able to navigate systems, because I'm hoping that in your 4 years of matriculating, or 5 years, or 6 years,
7,
or 7, however long it takes you to finish, right? Which also requires a level of tenacity. The lessons in which you're learning and the relationships in which you're developing with people while you're here, you can't put a price on. You also can't put, in my personal opinion, a price on having a interconnectivity to a group of people who understand what you have been through and are teaching you about how to get through it.
I agree.
So there is no value. There's no dollar amount that can be placed on that. I see people say, well, you shouldn't be going to school for a degree that doesn't yield income. But this is just my thought. You're not going to undergrad specifically for the degree. You're going to undergrad to learn not only about yourself, but be in an environment in which can empower you to be able to accomplish the next chapter of your life. Now, some people will say, well, I can learn that at home, or I could learn and do that at community college. And for some of you, that may be true. Some people will say, hey, I could learn that on a job and I can get on the job training. For some of you, that could be true. But it's been my experience that many employers aren't just looking for an individual who has quote unquote experience on a workplace. You need to be able to show that you started something and you finished something.
Very true.
And the credential that comes with you receiving and obtaining your undergraduate degree is the proof that I can start something and I can finish something. The additives comes in when, again, with the relationships that you make, the connections that you make, and more than anything else, specifically those who attend the HBCU, it's my hope that you learn something about yourself and your people that for many of us, we can't get elsewhere.
That's a fact. So I want to ask you, what are some of the things that you got from college, that you took away from college, that you still use in your life today?
At South Carolina State, we call it bulldog tenacity, which just means like literally not giving up. No matter what it is, we do not give up. I would also say I learned in undergrad about myself in terms of kind of understanding my purpose to my people. And then when I came and got my master's and my doctorate here, I really learned the importance and value that I have within the ecosystem of my people, and then how important it is for me to give back to my people.
No, that's a fact.
Because people poured into me here at this institution, and they were patient with me in ways in which I can't quite describe. They were gracious with me in ways in which I can't quite describe. And then in turn, I owe that back to my community.
So you're giving all students A's. I heard you.
Well, unfortunately, that doesn't happen. but those are things in which I learned. And then specifically from President Abdullah and our former provost, Dr. Palm, and our current provost, Dr. Menace, and my dean, Dr. Isis Walton, and my educational mother, Dr. Linda Noel Batiste. Like, they have been able to help me understand just how valuable I am and make me feel wanted, which in turn makes the commitment to our institution and our people that much easier for me, because I want to ensure that everyone else feels how I felt and how I feel about our people.
That's a fact. Stop playing. You playing around too much. Like, you want to do something, you want to make the money, you want to build wealth because it look cool, but you're not serious, because you know what I got, and I got something for you. The Blueprint for Investing, Volume 1, created by me, Aaliyah Duah. It gives you a step-by-step guide on how to get started investing in the stock market. See, if you want to really build wealth, you got to put your money into things that's going to work for you, right? Because the job money cool, but you want to make the money work too, right? So it's going to give you a step-by-step guide, investing tools, the apps to use, everything. And the best part is, I know you don't like to read, so I only made it 28 pages. That's it, right? 28 pages, and you getting yourself some wealth of knowledge. So make sure y'all tune in, get your copy today, and go to financialrevolutionn.com. Let's get it, y'all. Back to the episode. Yeah, I like I told President Abdullah, I feel like the greatest thing that I took away from my undergrad experience was I understood my value. Yeah. Like, I left knowing who Aaliyah was. Yeah. And I take pride in that. Like, now that I'm out here in a little real world, like, I know how to navigate some things. Or even like when I talk to Yanai about like different experiences that we have, like being at SGA, right? How like some things just remind us like of an SGA experience. So now we can just go in our toolbox and be like, okay, what did we do? What did we do then? You know what I'm saying? Right. And like, it's those experiences that I feel like if I did not come to college, I don't know where that would have led. You know, like I don't think that, like, I don't know. I feel like I kind of have that personality where I try to make things work wherever I'm at, but I do think that this was necessary, and specifically coming, like leaving New York was important too. Well, your skill, your tools were sharpened. Yes. You know? Yeah. So you need the sharpening in order to be able to navigate and go to the next level. And some folks will say, well, hey man, I'm a bright person. I'm a learn these things regardless. I don't have to spend X amount of dollars to be able to learn this. And if that is the case, then more power to you. But again, I think that sometimes we place value in money and not understanding the experience. I agree, but I don't like paying my student loans off. None of us do. I would attest to that. Like the monthly payment of the student loans, I do not like it. But outside of working here at VSU, I know that you are an entrepreneur, right? And own a couple of different things, right? But I see you post most your laundromat, right? What made you open up a laundromat? I want to ask that. Yeah, so at one point I owned 3 laundromats. Ambition, I think, was a key deciding factor. Looking at the rate of return was a key deciding factor. And then just saying, candidly, F it, why not? Like, let's try. And those are things like qualities and traits that I think I learned from school. School. Like, let's try it. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I mean, what makes other individuals better than me? So, developed a team in which we worked very hard in trying to develop our laundromats and work a model. And then I also learned that, like, it was a situation in which I was stretched and potentially and possibly stretched too thin. So I had to figure out different ways to be able to navigate, like, how to fall back and step back and focus on different things that were more of importance to me. And if I didn't go through that experience, then I wouldn't have known those things. So, from being a political science department chair to being a chair of a housing authority board to owning laundromats to running a basketball league to being a dad, like all of these different things, that these different pockets that I had going on, I had to be able to prioritize them and then make decisions based on where my priorities lied. But in some instances, I wouldn't have been able to have and understand how to prioritize without going through certain experiences. So, I enjoyed the time in which I was owning those laundromats. I've sold them. I don't own them anymore. Okay, cool. But they were start a business to sell it sometimes. Oh well, I mean, the point that I learned is you often buy to scale to sell. But again, it was an experience in which I really enjoyed. That's good. So, did you have any other businesses prior to that, or? I mean, I've written 2 books. Yes, your 2 books. Yes. We have some other announcements coming out soon. Okay. Cool. So I mean, I've been in social entrepreneurship, like community entrepreneurship for a while, building organizations, building nonprofits, and then took my chances in building and developing on the business, on the financial side with the laundromats. And again, man, all of it has been really important for me to understand me. And I think that's one thing I hope our listeners or the people who are watching this can understand, like learning about yourself is a journey.
and give yourself grace and patience to learn and continue to learn about yourself, because you're going to consistently evolve and turn into a different person over time. And that's like growth and development.
What would you say is like one thing that you really grew from? Like that's something that was really tough and you outgrew?
Wonder or concerning myself and overtly worrying about people's opinions about the things in which I do.
And how did you outgrow that? Because that's a deep one for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think just understanding that I'm in control of myself, and every day I have to work to be patient with myself and patient with others, but I can't concern myself about how others are going to perceive me, because their perception of me is their perception.
And everybody's going to create their own.
They're going to create their own perception based off of their experience, but I am allowed to grow. I am allowed to grow. And I'm not, and I don't have to define myself based off the worst thing in which I've ever done or the best thing in which I've ever done. It's my job to consistently try to be better today than I was yesterday, put forth my best foot, and then again, like just me personally, do things that are pleasing to God.
Yeah, that's a fact.
And that's that.
It's a fact. I always tell my peers, I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes we're always gonna be a villain in someone's story. Always. Like, if you do one thing for one person, that means in some essence or form, you're probably letting somebody else down, whether it's your time or it's like you can't do something or whatever, right? And I think that when we just understand that that's just life. Yeah. And not meaning that like you got to go out here and just being evil and like just being a villain to be a villain, but more so just understand that you can't please everyone all the time.
I mean, I had 15,000 people writing like letters to my local newspaper and even sending notes to our school, like saying disparaging and bad things about me because I was working to take down Confederate monuments. Wow. And like, to me, you know, people sending death threats or saying the worst thing in which they could think, it really made me understand that people are going to say whatever they want. And I can't concern myself with what they say. What I can concern myself is what I do. And what I do has to be impactful for my people.
That's a fact. So I guess, but how do you build like that strength? Because I know a lot of people who want to be that change, right? Yeah. They want to be that powerful person, that person who's like, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody does. I'm here to make this change or be impactful in this space. How do you build that level of strength?
I don't think everybody really wants to do that.
Not everyone, but I'm saying for the people who do.
Yeah, I'm talking about for those people too. Like those people, I don't think that everyone quite understands what that strength looks like, because in order to develop that strength, you usually have to go through something that's very chaotic. So I think more importantly than people trying to develop that strength, it's important for them to understand and continuing to develop their purpose. Because when you walk in your purpose, then whatever is for you will come to you, and you'll be able to deal with what comes before you appropriately.
Very true.
But you got to walk in your purpose, not somebody else's purpose.
Very, very, very true. Very true. Yeah. Do you feel like I'm shifting the conversation a little bit. Do you feel like the whole debate that we have between like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, do you think that is progressive towards our people?
Conversation is conversation. I don't think that we have to always like compare or get into a matter of one person is better than the other. I will say that in my personal estimation, like Dr. King is one of the most radical people that we'll ever find. There's not too many people who would actively walk towards death threats or walk towards danger and say that I have the personal resolve that no matter what you say about me and or towards me, I'm not going to allow you to deter me from doing what I have to do. I think that's different from a person saying, you know, I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done, and then actually another person like going and doing whatever needs to be done. But both individuals, I mean, played very pivotal roles within our community. And, you know, the time in which they spent on this earth should be cherished. And I'm so glad to have the ancestors sacrifice for us. And I pray for their families, because I think a lot of people don't understand the trauma that people's families have to go through. Yeah. You only see the person who's at the front, but you don't see the work that's behind the scenes. And, you know, a lot of us talk about Malcolm and Martin now, But if Malcolm and Martin were alive today and we had social media, would many of us follow them? So let's just be glad that they were during their time, and we just do the work in which we have to do.
That's very true. Very true. Now, who are some people that inspire you? Like some people that you look up to, or do you look up to people? You know how people be like, I don't look up to nobody.
I mean, that's crazy. I look up to people. I look up to a lot of people.
Energy, you know?
Yeah. I'm not like that. There's a lot of people. President Abdullah, his He's ability, to be able to compartmentalize.
Yeah, he's good. He's really good.
He works really well with handling a multitude of different responsibilities, and he compartmentalizes them very well. And in his charisma to be able to motivate people to continue to do work.
He's so good.
Yeah, I think that's something that I really look up to. There was a brother who passed away. His name was Thomas Dortch. He was the
100 Black Men.
Yeah, he was the chairman of the 100 Black Men. He was the chair of the board.
I'll be studying.
He was incredible. Chair of Clark Atlanta University. Chair of the board of Clark Atlanta. Chair of Fort Valley State. He was absolutely incredible. So his ability to be able to navigate was really inspiring to me. People like Angela Rye, I admire her selflessness. She's always willing to share her platform and assist others. I really admire that. And then there's a lot of, there's others, of course, my dean, Isis Walton. I admire her graciousness that she shows with people. And I admire like my daughters. To be honest, like their ability to be able to handle what comes their way and navigate different situations. I admire a lot of my students to be able to push through and persevere very difficult situations. I admire you and Yanaya. Like,
appreciate you. Thank you.
Developing scholarships.
Thank you.
While in undergrad, like those are things that I wasn't doing at all. Like that is absolutely incredible. So I draw inspiration from a wide variety of different people, like literally on the daily. And I think that's how we get better. Yeah,
I agree. I literally tell people, like, sometimes I'll wake up, let's say I go on Instagram, I see something, and I'll tell them like, yo, you inspired me for the day. Like, you let me know, wake up, get to work. Like, let me get something shaken. Like, you know, and I think those are like the best things that we don't value sometimes, right? Yeah. Like the little things, the little good things, not even little, the good things that we see on a daily basis that are essentially making the world a better place, right?
Casey Perry's energy.
Yeah,
I admire. Like he smiles and he's happy every day. I mean, and that doesn't mean he doesn't have bad days, but like, man, there's a lot of people just on this campus that I admire and I love.
Yeah. So we brought it down to, did you do that on purpose?
Yes.
We brought it down to our last couple of questions, right? I admire you as well. I think you have a great way of like networking with people and making sure, like, I realize like everywhere we go with you or any space that I see you, you're like good in that room. Like, you know, people know you, like, you know how to work the room.
That don't mean I'm good, but
yeah, you know how to work the room, right?
I appreciate that.
How do we go about like networking, right? But like, you know, just not even just networking to get something out of somebody, but networking just to form a relationship, right? Yeah. Where like, you know, it can be where maybe I can call you for something or you can call me for something. Yeah. Like, how do you develop these relationships?
I think it's important to genuinely build relationships. And I'm going to be honest, I love my people and I don't ever want my people to feel as if they're being taken advantage of and or taken for granted. So when I want to build with you, I genuinely want to build with you because there may be something that transpires down the road in which we can actively work together on. And I want us to be able to have good experiences with each other. That doesn't mean that we have to see eye to eye and or do something with each other in the immediate, but I want us to be able to build with each other so that we know that we're in this together.
Yeah.
And then I would say, like, when people are looking to quote unquote network, I wouldn't view everything as a potential transactional opportunity. Like, sometimes you may not. Okay, so I'll tell a really quick story, right? This is going to sound crazy. I'll tell a quick story. Okay, so GZ is a good friend of mine. And one day we were in Atlanta and he was like, come to the house, come over to his house. And I brought my little brother with me. So Jeezy was at his house, and Tip, and his family. There were different people there, right? But it was a small group. And while this is my man, and he's who invited me over to his house, I spent more time talking to Big Dave from Dave Cheesesteaks, who I had never met. We didn't know each other, but he just like poured into me and told me how he navigates different systems, because I was intentional about the conversation when he and I were having. I was locked in on my conversation with him and not worrying about like anything else that was going on or who else was in the room. I wanted to be intentional with learning and listening from him, and then following up after our conversation, and then genuinely supporting him. Yeah. So like, if he wins, I want to talk about it and support it. And I think sometimes, or at least from some of the relationships in which I've developed, like, people know I'm not really in competition. I want you to win, because a win for you is a win for us. Yeah, undoubtedly. And I think that, again, when we do things for the right reasons, God will always bless us. Yeah, very true. Yeah, I agree. I feel like sometimes though, like navigating spaces, especially I guess people that you would deem like high level entrepreneurs or people like that, sometimes it could be a little bit challenging, because they do have a lot of people who come across them where they are transactional. Yeah. So when you really genuinely want to build that relationship, it's like, okay, like how do I go about it? Like, of course you start with introducing yourselves, being supportive and things like that. But then what if it's a time where I do want to get somebody on my podcast, right? Yeah. Like that's technically me asking them for something, right? So it's just like, how do I form the relationship but don't make them feel like I am like trying to use them, like for, I mean, sometimes it's just making the ask, because some things are transactional and that's life. Yeah. But trying to develop the relationship first I think is important. You had posted, you went to the Museum of Bibles? Museum of Bibles. I actually passed it driving here from DC. Okay. And there was a picture there of like, that's in a lot of churches and things like Jesus. That, of the white Jesus, but with the brown foot, the brown foot and like the brown hand or whatever, right? But the face was white. Yeah, but the face was white. Yeah. And what's so crazy? I was in Ghana, and Ghana has like these churches all over, right? And we went to this church in Ghana. Yeah. And in the church, and mind you, I'm in Africa. Yeah. White Jesus everywhere. Yeah. And I just found that so crazy to me. Like, I'm in the Mecca. Why'd you find that crazy? I found that crazy for the simple fact that I feel like I'm in the essence of like blackness here. Does white supremacy not also find itself being prevalent in the essence of blackness? Everywhere. It's not okay. I didn't find it like crazy where it's like I didn't think this would be possible. Yeah. But it was more so crazy of like, why isn't nobody talking about this? Yeah. Why is nobody challenging this? Yeah. And you had these people giving a group of young black people a tour, and we all just looking like, like what's going on here? Yeah. Nobody's gonna question this. Right. So I want to break down like how do we know that Jesus is black in your opinion? Because again, everything is opinionated. Yeah. Right. So how do you know Jesus is black? I mean, I just left from from Africa, and I've been to the region in which the Bible says that Jesus lived, and the people there have very brown skin. And I would imagine they would kind of look the same way now that they did then. So that's how. And then I wouldn't consider myself a very religious person. I would consider myself to be a spiritual person. And the God that I serve, or the higher power and the energy in which I believe, I know looks like me. That's a fact. So I would go to the further extent to ask you, like, what, as we wind down, what are 3 white supremacy myths that you feel like we need to unadapt? I don't know if that's a word, but I would encourage you to get my book, When White Supremacy Knocks Fight Back, how white people can use their privilege and how black people can use their power. You can listen to the audiobook, and we have a lot of things that are broken down in that regard. The first thing I would say is that this notion and this myth that black folk don't work together, that's absolutely not true. We're literally working together right now. Very true. HBCU institutions wouldn't be in existence if Black folk weren't able to work together. We have banking institutions, we have neighborhoods, we have businesses together. There's a multitude of instances in which we have to work together, and we do work together. Even in instances in which you think we may not do so within certain ecosystems, we work together. The second one is that overall that we're lazy or that we're just unworthy or invaluable. I would encourage us to understand that your experience or your negative experiences are not the totality of all of us as a whole. And it's up to us also to create positive experiences with each other. And then lastly, one myth that I would say that I would want us to debunk really wouldn't have to do as much with white supremacy as much as I would say it has to do with just the belief of ourselves. And we are powerful beyond measure.
Yes.
And true. We have proven time and time again our power. We set the trends. And also it's important for us to not be blindsided by distractions. So even like right now, everyone's talking about, there's a lot of people, not everyone, a lot of people talking about what's going on with Cole, Kendrick, and Drake, right? Yeah. And while those kind of social things are taking place, I would also encourage us and implore us to spend that amount of time within our communities, improving them.
Yeah.
That amount of attention within our communities, improving them. And there are a lot of us who are doing so, and there are people who are able to multitask, but just how much better off can we be when we efficiently spend our energy and then remind ourselves how important it is for us to collectively do so.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Well, so we're winding down to our last segment.
Yeah.
This segment is called the Talk Your Ish segment.
Okay.
Right? So this is your moment you get to talk your ish, right? So first question I'm asking you is, what is something that you're really, really passionate about?
Black people.
Black people. You give me that.
Yeah.
That's your energy. Yes, Black people.
Yeah.
Right?
Got a fist in the back of my head.
Yes, you do have the fist in the back of your head. Yes. And next, now this is your talk your ish moment, right? So this is your moment that you get to talk your ish to any experience that you ever had, any hardship you ever had. Talk your ish to yourself, right? If you want to, like some people use it to empower themselves, or, you know, to somebody that, you know, may have doubted you or anything like this. Talk your ish moment.
I don't need to do that.
You don't need, okay.
Nah.
Okay.
We're good enough.
Okay.
That's all I would say.
All right. So you good? You locked in?
Yeah,
okay. Cool.
I mean,
but what was? It's not a negative thing, right?
No,
so
I know,
what is something positive you would say to yourself, and if you were looking in the mirror right now?
Something positive I would say to myself if I'm looking in the mirror. Everything that is in front of you is in front of me. And
what do you mean by that? That sounded like the quote that's going around now, where it's like, at the end of the day got to end.
No, which is also true. But but I think like the things in which I'm kind of currently going through, I'm juggling a lot of different responsibilities and trying to build different things. It's all preparation for where I want to be later. So when I was a high school teacher and getting my master's and my doctorate here, I was driving an hour and a half one way, 2 to 3 times a week from Charlottesville to Virginia State. And some people would say to me, like, well, why? That's crazy. You got UVA literally 5 minutes from your house. You're passing University of Richmond. You're passing VCU to go all the way to Petersburg. And I would say to myself, like, this is preparation. I had a mentor, a friend of mine, Sorad. He would say to me, like, this is preparation for something else that God has for you. And then lo and behold, later I would be teaching here. So me driving while I was getting my school was preparing me for when I'm actually working here. So I would just tell myself and remind myself that all of the kind of difficulties and the challenges that I'm currently dealing with professionally and personally is all preparation for what's in front of me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. A lot of people don't know, like, when I was here, my senior year here at VSU, I was literally going back home to New York City every single Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Every single Wednesday. I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, getting on the plane, and going to teaching at 2 schools at New York City for the whole entire day. And then getting back on the plane and coming back here to run the school. Right? Every single Wednesday. There was no Wednesday off besides, like, spring break or anything like that.
That's incredible.
Like that, right?
Preparation,
right? And little do I know, right, that was preparing me to get the relationships, develop built the relationships that I needed, right? So that I could come out of college and be like a full-time entrepreneur, have the preparation to just the mindset of like, it just created like a dog in me. Like I was hungry, right? And that hungriness is still there. And I think I do agree with what you said. Like just take everything that you're doing right now as like, it means something later. Yeah. It means something later, right? So that's really, really true, right? So Stokely is hungry.
Yes.
So now just go to the quizzing time, right? Okay. This is the first time I'm doing this, right? So first I'm asking you, what's your favorite rap lyric that involves like that motivates you, or it could be like it talk about, you know, getting money or whatever. Like what's your favorite lyric that kind of like gets you in your bag?
My favorite rap lyric, probably, well, I'd probably say the entire song. Jeezy has a song, The Real Is Back Too, the intro. It reminds me of a lot of different things I had to go through growing up, and is a reminder that I can do whatever I need to.
All right, cool. So I'm about to quiz you real quick. This is a game I created called Rap Cards,
Let's go.
Where
It's dope.
We're teaching financial literacy through rap music and rap lyrics. So the way this game works, right, is I'm going to read out a definition.
Okay.
This definition is basically a word, and you have 20 seconds to guess what the word is. If you don't get the word, then I'm gonna read you a rap lyric, and you have to guess the song title and artist.
All right, cool.
Ready?
Let's go.
So I'm gonna say it twice, and if you don't get it, you ready?
Yep.
All right, cool. So anything that takes money out of your pocket or is devaluing you.
Okay.
Anything that takes money out of your pocket or devaluing you. Timer started.
Depreciation?
No.
Anything that sacrifice?
No. Oh, I guess I'll give you a hint. It's a financial term.
Okay.
Yeah.
A debt.
8 seconds.
Liability.
No. Liability.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Bellamy.
Yeah.
Okay.
A liability.
Liability. Okay. Yes. Liability, right? So the rap lyric for this one, well, let me see if you notice. I got some liabilities, but I'm still on fire.
Yeah. No, I don't.
It's actually by Jeezy.
I got some liabilities, but I'm still on fire?
Yes.
What song is that?
Holy Ghost.
Okay.
Holy Ghost by Jeezy.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to rap the verse. I don't know.
Okay.
Ask me to rap the verse.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to give you one more. All right.
Jeezy, I knew that before you.
One more.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on. I'm trying to give you one that like might shake up the room.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we're going to do the fast round. This is what we're going to do. All right. So the way the fast round works is that I have in front of me different stock terms on this card. You have to name as many stock terms, like terms that would relate to the stock market as much as possible in 20 seconds. All right. So I'm going to be starting the timer. Ready?
Yep.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, I got to name the stock terms. Okay, I got you.
All right, we're going to start over.
Okay, I got you.
Go.
Trades, IPOs, goodness gracious.
Not as easy as you think.
Trades, IPOs, shares.
4 seconds.
Buys, sales. I don't know.
5.
That was bad.
That was 5. Okay, that wasn't horrible, but you gotta step that up.
Yeah,
you gotta step that up. But it's a little bit different when you're under pressure.
Yeah,
you know?
my mind. I'm usually good under pressure. My mind went blank.
Yes, it did. Well, where can the people follow you? And where can people buy your book as well? Yeah,
you can follow me on all social media platforms. It's just at Dr. Wes Bellamy. You can purchase both books. When White Supremacy Knocks Fight Back on Amazon, as well as Monumental, It Was Never About a Statue. That can also be found on Amazon. And when is this coming out?
Probably like a month, maybe.
All right. And then you all probably have seen, I have a documentary coming out.
Nice.
Produced and directed by Eric Newman.
Nice.
The director of the podcast All the Smoke with Stephen Jackson and Matt Barnes. The documentary is called A Time to Yell, More Than a Statue. And we just got accepted to the Black American Film Festival.
Nice.
Or American Black Film Festival, which is the largest black film festival in the world. Wow. So,
that's
you guys will be seeing the documentary soon.
Yeah, that's really nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and coming on the platform. This is going to be a good one.
Good job, Aaliyah.
Thank you.
All right.